Andrew, you've been in civil society, you've been around for a while. You've been an advocate for credible representation. You've been an advocate for evidence-based governance systems, policy making. Let's hear your views on our current electoral system and how that affects civil society.
Thank you very much. And thanks to Charlie and Darwin. I was copiously taking notes. I think you ended up, the whole question of reducing the cost burden of the electoral system in Sierra Leone, increasing cooperation, Charlie said, and then I will add better management of diversity. We've had situations where we've had the courts to allocate seats to SLPP in the Western area. We've had the courts to allocate seats to APC in Kenim and Kaila. We've had situations where we have to give the burden to the judiciary to decide representation. I think that's problematic. But I think I will turn to the broader question of the cost of election, the cost of systems. We've just completed the Afrobarometer round 10 results. And what pleasantly came out surprising is that Sierra Leone's diversity management, because we asked the question, is government treating your ethnic group unfairly? The number of people that said never, it rose from between 2022, it rose from 59% to 69%. Almost 70% of Sierra Leoneans are saying, government is not treating my ethnic group unfairly. Then you begin to ask, why is that? It's because the whole question of fractionalized elites, debating over electoral system, the whole tension around politics was reduced between that period to now. So that, and again, there was an interesting data point about performance of government. I think for those of you that have seen the Afrobarometer results, which we just published yesterday, so the highest point of performance of government was security, where 73% of Sierra Leoneans are saying government is handling security well. So is it really government that is handling security well, or is the political tension have reduced in the country? So we actually need to debate that, to discuss that. So Gavin said, and I think it's quite clear, that an electoral system and an electoral law is a family of rules that guides elections, whereas an electoral system actually determines who gets seats, how seats are allocated, how you actually go into governance. That's an electoral system. But we have this de facto two-party system. Unfortunately, we pretend to have a multi-party in Sierra Leone, but we don't. We have a de facto two-party system where it is difficult for SLPP to take seats in the north and the northwest. It's difficult for APC to take seats in the south and the southeast. So we have this de facto system, and it's good we discuss this as a challenge for Sierra Leone, wherein political parties are developing regional strategies of governance instead of national strategies of governance. How do we support political parties to adopt a national character? I come from Moyamba. God knows from the time I was born, APC has been getting one seat in one small area. That's always what they get. In one small area, ethnically occupied by Timnis. They hardly get seats in Bo. So that's the situation. So we have to, as Charlie rightly mentioned, how do we increase cooperation among political parties? But to me, the biggest question, what makes me to be a fan of proportional representation, is how do we minimize the cost of elections? We just did a paper on the cost of violence and political instability, and it turned out that between 2022 to 2023, just that year, where we had so much tension over politics, the contribution to GDP growth, elections contribution to GDP growth, was -7%. And when we extrapolated that in GDP terms, it's $417 million. Experts have been talking about the financial cost of elections, but the electoral system, the cost of the electoral system is way beyond finances. It's the moral cost, it's the political cost, it's the social cost, and of course the financial cost. So we sat down for 42 days between 2022 to 2023, when there is a scarce markets are closed. We sat for 22 days, and when we calculated, there is a cost for every day closure of the state. We lose $21 million for every day closure of the state. So it's, and Charlie was mentioning about, you know, promoting cooperation. Promoting cooperation is not just about winning a seat. Promoting cooperation is how do we get elites to agree on the provision of water, the provision of electricity, and the electoral system that we have, which is always about competition without cooperation, is making it difficult for Sierra Leone to make politics, for politicians to be effective in delivering results. One last point I will make is around the fractionalized elites. If we reduce, I don't know whether some of you are paying attention to this report by Funds for Peace, the fragility study, the global fragility study. Normally, when this report comes out, we what's Sierra Leone's performance on the peace index. That same year that I'm talking about, Sierra Leone dropped by 21 points on the peace index, just because of fractionalized elites. It's because APC and SLPP cannot get along. And there is a lot of literature that says the difference between developed countries and developing and underdeveloped countries is because elites can agree. You can always disagree in politics, but you need to agree on, let's have electricity, let's have roads. So in the context of those disagreements, the national interest, political parties always bow to national interest. So with those remarks, I think I will leave it at that. I think the best system that will make us manage the state effectively, I think, will be the proportional representation system on the basis that it helps us manage fractionalized elites. It helps us increase the national character of political parties. Why can't political parties think of having a national character? Why should they be having one region strategy? And it's always finger pointing. You know, that region is tribalistic. No, this region is tribalistic. We need to force them to develop a national character. Thank you.
Man, thanks again for that. As always, I know you will always come to us with figures, and I hope you'll be able to throw some more light on the specific cost of elections. That's something that I'll be interested in, and I'm sure even the listeners and those who will be interested in. Because in the last 10 to 15 years on the continent, that has been a major topic being discussed, the cost of elections. How do we, for instance, because the cost of elections, running elections, has been so high on the continent. In my previous slide, we were thinking of ways that electoral commissions can support each other. I mean, across borders. So, for instance, Liberia supports Sierra Leone, and Sierra Leone to support like Guinea, ballot boxes, and that kind of stuff. I think we did a bit of that, Mr. CEC, in 2023. So, how do we, what kind of systems will help us address some of these challenges? Well, friendly, across in Kenya, we've got 47 seats set aside for women. No man contests, no male contests those positions at all. And that's part of their own way of addressing affirmative action and so on. How do you think, which of these systems do you think would really address gender-related issues or women's rights issues as the boss of 50/50 here? And
Thank you very much, Joe. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody, and thanks for having me on this panel. So you asked a specific question about women, although I shouldn't just ask women questions, but thank you. So on that, in Kenya, In Kenya, Kenya has one way of doing this. Tanzania has actually quite a similar way also. But I've done interviews with women in Kenya, women in Tanzania, and their concern was that when these seats are reserved, safe seats, that they were actually marginalized. People saw them as, oh, nobody contests. And because they're not competitive, they're seen as, oh, they do it because they can't compete equally to men. So let's have a special position for them. And the same women found that people didn't respect them, they didn't take them seriously, and they didn't really have a constituency. They were just sort of women at large, but they have no specific place that they are responsible for. So it's a problematic system to just say, let's have women one side, and then we'll have everything else for the men. Lena mentioned having, I think, how did you call it, Nina? Credible women or effective women. Yes, how effective are the men? You know, no offense to men in here, but, you know, men are not effective either. No, I'm sorry, sorry, I'm not, I know this is going live, parliamentarians forgive me. It's not directed at anybody. But it's just over the years, we have this thing, it's almost like we want to put women to a higher standard. And I'm not saying that means have substandard women. I just think that we have to be true to ourselves and say, in as much as we can point out to the deficiencies in women, we can also point out these same deficiencies in men. And let us be equal about our critique. The two panelists, it seems everybody here is saying, I'm not in favor of one or the other, although Andrew came out openly with PR. I think Charlie was going in the direction of PR. So how can I put myself? I think, to Lena's point, our systems are problematic. You can have whichever system, but if we have deep-rooted inequities, deep-rooted structural issues, then either system will yield problems. We talk about first past the post, and how first past the post means that you are closer to your constituency. You know your parliamentarian. I did not know my parliamentarian. Maybe that's on me. As a political scientist, I should have gone to look for that person. But just because it was under an FPTP system, I didn't necessarily know that person. And we as 50/50 talked to women who said, we don't know this person because we were not the person, we were not the ones who voted for that person. We have electors, and it was mentioned, that you pay money to, and so they come on, it's actually the party still that determines who goes into that position, whether it's FPTP or PR. Now PR, so then when people say, well, PR is problematic because you don't really know your representative, I would say, did we know it any better under FPTP? Now, when it comes to PR, there are ways, and I think this is what Gavin talked about, it's how do you engineer the systems in such a way that it reflects the needs that we have as a country. You have systems that you can have citizens vote for the parliamentarians on the list. You have closed lists, which is what we did have, as you mentioned, Joe. We had no clue who got there. It was only after the elections that then we're like, oh, it's this person, it's this person. Well, we're not really elected, supposed to know. How you manage that? So how did that happen? Parties had an inordinate amount of control. We talked to women who said, my people wanted me there, but because I didn't have the money, I didn't have the resources, I didn't have the, the know-how to get into these positions, I was marginalized and I was left out. So how do we change PR? That's not necessarily a feature just of the PR system, it's a feature of how we practice the PR system. So can we do an open list proportional representation system where you actually have voters that cast their vote for a candidate within a party list and not just the party? And you can actually have, yes, the party vote determines how many seats the party wins, but individual candidate votes decide which people on the party get into that place. So that gives some agency to us as citizens. You've got countries, Brazil, Finland, Sweden, Indonesia, that practice that kind. There are some cons to this. So whilst, yes, it does increase our choice as voters, it encourages party competition internally, which can also be problematic for women because we all know money really influences our parties and who gets where they get. But we can talk about how to manage financial overcommitments. We can talk about how to make elections more affordable, also going to Andrew's point. And it discourages party elites from controlling the list. So those are the benefits of this open system. But it can cause fragmentation or intra-party rivalries. And we already see this happening. I mean, even now in these most recent elections, we see jockeying within parties. We see tensions. So you can have, it can really cause that to rise up. And then it can also, as I said, increase campaign costs because you have that competition going on. But then you have another form, which is the flexible list proportional representation. And here you can do both. Voters can vote for the party, or they can vote for a candidate on a party list. So there are different ways, and candidate votes can reorder the list. So the party might have one list, but as citizens, depending on who we vote for, we can create some reordering of that list and have people that we would like to have there. On women, the 30% quotas have said, yes, you can have that in the FPTP. So I think one thing I'd ask our presenters is tell us how this would work within the FPTP system. We are 50-50, we are 50-50. So we call for parity, actually, and you should feel blessed that we're not saying 52%, because we're more. But we're saying at least you can do a zipper system under the PR, where you alternate one woman, one man, and don't even make it one man, one woman, which is what you have two men and a woman. You can alternate it so you can get the 50% that we talk about. The representation of smaller parties. So some would say PR allows more parties to come in. This point has been mentioned. You can, if you engineer it in such a way where you have this 11.9 threshold, the benefits of PR, bringing in more ethnic groups, given that we have the plurality, we don't necessarily see that. And I want to just bring in numbers. Andrew loves numbers. I love numbers too. And we can see that even with AB, he's absolutely right. It has improved in terms of the perception that believe that government is managing things more effectively, which is a good thing. But we're also seeing trust in each other. It's been pretty bad. And we have a paper on this that we wrote 3 years ago. Should Sierra Leoneans be worried about ethnicity or something in the advance of elections? We saw that there has been an increasing level of mistrust. So this is people who say that they trust neighbors, that they trust people from other ethnic groups, and that they trust people from other religions. It has dropped. All three of those have dropped. People from other ethnic groups have dropped by 10%. So in 2022, you have 52% that say that they trust people from other ethnic groups. This has gone down to 46%. So under half of citizens say that they trust people from another ethnic group. What does that mean? Where we have a system right now that's polarized, and it's de facto two political party system. How do we mitigate that in such a way where we can bring in other ethnic groups? Putting the threshold down is one way, but you do have the implications on cost on our elections and implications on the number of people that come in. But when we know that, again, apologies, but politicians can really manipulate tensions. It's not necessarily that citizens don't like each other, but you might have one political party, both political parties, that might jockey in such a way to make you think, oh, we really don't like each other, so we're going to be, you're going to care. You don't have to really think about policies. You're thinking more in terms of how do I keep my base satisfied. That suggests that we actually do need to open it up so that there are other voices and that there's more competition. I'll stop here for now, thank you.
So the figure people always come up with from an informed perspective, evidence-driven perspective. Well, a couple of things struck a chord with me. One, the value systems of the country, as citizens, all of us. What are our own values? What do we stand for? So in developing or selecting an electoral system that works for us, I think our value systems must be taken into consideration. 2, how do we institutionalize our political parties? 3, the inclusion or the constant involvement of our courts in our electoral process. Not just here. One of our senior brothers, West African brothers, Professor Chidi Odigano, has done a fantastic book on that. The role of our courts in elections, in our electoral processes. That's something I'll get the title for you, I'll share that. He wrote a fantastic book on that, on the involvement of the judiciary in our electoral processes. but also the cost of elections. When we had a conversation with the EMBs and the security sector 2 days ago, we were informed that for Tonkolimba alone, the SLP deployed 600 troops for by-elections for council in Tonkolimba. So imagine the human costs, logistics, all the costs involved, financial cost of deploying 600 troops for just the by-elections of a council in Tonkolimba. That's food for thought. But during my comparative analysis, there is a table which maybe by the time we finish, I can show that what the EMBs, how much money EMBs have had, or governments, successive governments have had to put into elections, but not just our Sierra Leone government or our international friends, how much money they've spent on elections, electoral management. That's huge. Those are also things that those are factors that we should take into consideration as we as a people decide or deliberate on the selection of or the choice of an appropriate electoral system. Dr. Julia Spencer, you've been around for a while. You've been a policymaker. You are a media guru with over 40 years experience. Your thoughts on the PR will be very, very helpful here. And also really bringing out the role of the media in this whole conversation will be very helpful.
Thank you, Joe. I have a feeling I'm the oldest person in this room. And I think that gives me certain privileges. Not to mention the fact that I've been around for a while. I've seen Sierra Leone go through various elections, different types of elections, multi-party, single party, one party, back to multi-party, first past the post, proportional representation, back to first past the post, now proportional representation. But I will state very clearly, and I think everybody knows my views. I'm an advocate for proportional representation. I started advocating for this in 2008, over 2 decades ago, almost 2 decades ago. Why? I'm sure all of us know about the World Happiness Report. And I'll start from there. The World Happiness Report for 2025 has been released. Now, the World Happiness Report does not rank countries based on how much laughter there is in a country, or how many jokes people tell. It looks at specific issues and indicators which they use to determine happiness in a country. And these indicators are income, life expectancy, social support, freedom, generosity, and trust in institutions. Those are the indicators that they look at. And the rankings of the first 15 countries in the world, all of them use one form of PR or the other. Every single one of them, the first 15. The 16th is the UK. The 18th is the United States of America. So in the first 20 countries ranked as the happiest in the world, only 2 use the FTP, whatever. Some F and PRT. And those 2 are the United Kingdom and the United States of America. Now, in Sierra Leone, we used first past the post for the first, how many decades? Until the war, 1996, we went to proportional representation, reason being that the whole country was not accessible, it was not possible to delimitate boundaries, etc., etc. We used the national list, closed list system. In 2002, we used the district closed list system. And then we went back to FPTP in 2007. Now, my observation is that during the period we were using FPTP, we had growing levels of violence, even under the one-party state. In fact, it became worse under the one-party state. When we went to proportional representation, it reduced significantly. Went back to FPTP, it reared its head again. Now we are in, we say it's proportional representation. Whether it actually aims at achieving the objectives of proportional representation, I'm not sure. Why do I say that? In 1996, there was no threshold. 2002, there was no threshold either. The system that was used was the largest remainder and the hair method. What is that? The total number of votes cast were divided by the number of seats available, and the number of votes that the party got determined the number of seats that was allocated, that were allocated to that party. Now, if you got, obviously, depending on the number of votes, you are not likely to get round figures. You'll have point something. And so, after the number of seats that the party got based on whole numbers, then they went to the balance, because all these seats will not be allocated, because there will be remainder seats because of those point something, point something. And the largest, the parties with the largest remainder, the seats were allocated like that. In 1996, parties got to parliament who did not even get 1% of the vote. In 2002, the same system was used at district level. Now come to 2023. We had one of the highest thresholds in the world. When you look at the thresholds used in most countries, you have 1%, 3%, 5%, 7%. You have between 8 and 10% for coalition parties. Most of them are below 10%. But you had 11.9%. And yet we pretended that we wanted small parties to have seats in parliament. We also pretended that independent candidates could win seats, when it was obvious that they could not. Now, where are we today? We have a society that is polarized and becoming more and more polarized. We have all sorts of issues. Incidentally, Sierra Leone ranked second in the World Happiness Report from the bottom. The only country we are better than is Afghanistan. We rank second from the bottom. And when we look at the reasons, you can understand why. So, yes, there are advantages and disadvantages of whatever system. Lina is right. People are the ones that determine how a system works. Yeah. If we look at the United States of America, if they are not careful, they are going to end up in a dictatorship. If somebody succeeds in decimating the judiciary, they are going to end up in a dictatorship. People talk about what is the best system here. People talk about a benevolent dictator. Yes, it works. But the difficulty of finding a dictator that is benevolent is where the problem lies. And when you look at the FPTP system, what you find that it tends to end up with a two-party system. Because when people vote, it gets to a point where they realize that if they are voting for a small party, they are wasting their votes. So people tend to coalesce around the larger parties. And in a society like ours, where you have ethnic groups, you have some major ethnic groups, and People talk about tribalism. I tell people no tribalism exists in Sierra Leone except when politics intervenes. The politicians are the ones that fan the flames of tribalism. I'm a Creole. I've traveled the length and breadth of this country. I've gone to a village, I don't know anybody, I don't speak the language. But I was given a place to sleep, a warm water for me to take a bath. They gave me food. They didn't ask me which ethnic group I belong to. So people move around, they intermarry. When politics is at play, then ethnicity rears its head. So, what are we trying to solve in Sierra Leone? Our electoral system will not solve all our problems, but it can help mitigate some of the major ones. The system, by its very nature, makes for certain things. The PR system makes for more collaboration. You cannot wake up one morning, you have a few people around you and you decide this is what I'm going to do, and you do it. You have to consult. You have to get others on side. And at times it is difficult, yes, it makes governance perhaps a bit more difficult because you cannot just do what you believe is right. You have to get others on board. But is that not what we want? People say in the PR system you don't know your parliamentarian. Why do you need to know your parliamentarian? Why do people want to know their parliamentarians in Sierra Leone? I think we all know the reason. So they can go to them when they need to go to the hospital, their uncle Bondo, they go to their parliamentarians. And you have parliamentarians who are afraid to go to their constituencies because of the pressures that their constituents put on them. So, as I think it's Edwin who said, even under the FPTP, many people did not know their parliamentarians. Just like many people did not know their councillors, me. They really, whether it's FPTP or whether it's proportional representation or, I don't know my councillor. I don't know my councillor because in a way I'm independent. Can we have a system where the parliamentarians will be free to go to their constituents and consult them? Do our parliamentarians consult their constituents before going to take a position in parliament? Maybe some do, but the majority don't. And so we have parliamentarians who are supposed to be representing people, but they are almost invariably representing themselves. It is their views that they push in parliament. Now, until and unless our politicians, was ever a politician? I served in government, so perhaps I was. But until our politicians can remove themselves from the situation and look at what is best for this country, and not view it from what is best for themselves, and not look at what they need to do to win elections for themselves, and look at what will serve the interests of this country best. What will make us more cohesive? What will make us all able to coalesce around certain issues? What do we need as a people? Our needs are the same, but we don't seem to be able to agree on them because this party moves in that direction. When some people support a candidate because they believe when that person wins, they get certain benefits. So, under the FTPT, I got that right there. Under the FPTP, under the FPTP, as has been said, is majority. Is it majority? Yes, but not necessarily above 50%. So you find that you have people representing perhaps a constituency where they do not even get 40% of the seats of the votes. So maybe they got 35%, but they got the largest number of votes, so they are the representative. The rest, the 65%, are left out. If you look at the councils, same thing. You have what they call the ward committees. It is the parliamentarian who determines who gets onto the ward committee? What is the basis for making those selections? Now, I think that we can go beyond whether it's parliament and councils. Even the executive, in my view, should have some level of proportional representation. And if we talk about cost of elections, it will further reduce the cost of election. One election, whoever gets the largest votes is the president. But everybody else who gets above a certain percentage should have a say in who gets appointed to whatever position, executive position, ministers, parastatals, ambassadors, etc. Why would that help us? Because whoever wins takes everything now. Takes everything, the rest get nothing. So what do we find happening? The party that wins, after maybe a few months, the rest of what they are focusing on, perhaps they tell us that they are doing development work, but whatever it is, with an eye to what they need to do to win the next elections. And the opposition, whatever they are doing is with an eye, how do we get this out and we take their place? So, if we can reduce that, and everybody can at some point after election focus on what needs to be done to develop this country, make life better for all the citizens, it will make life better for all of us. I'll stop there for now.
You can definitely do better. Come on.
Is that applause because of my age?
What? Age, wisdom, experience, everything, sir. And we do appreciate that. Well, just one point that we said. Our electoral system cannot solve all our problems, but it can help mitigate them. When he spoke, as he ended his intervention, when he mentioned the possibility, or when he recommended doing the simple majority, yes, when he recommended the possibility of doing the simple majority for the presidency, with a caveat that the other parties should have a role to play. I think that's where, for me, the powers of the president, that also brings that to the fore. I think we've had that conversation for years now in the constitutional review process. So I'm hoping that some of those things will come up again. But as we always say, nobody don't want to touch our name. And you know why? Because when A is there, they're fine. When B is not there, he or she complains. But that's where we are right now. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'll be a lot more comfortable standing up. We're going to open this up, this conversation up now. And I'll, see, Bossman is looking at me right in my eye. Don't intimidate me. Yes. So we're going to open the floor. Gavin, you've listened to all the discussants. I'm sure there are things you'd like to comment on. But let's open it. Give our AG is in the house. You're not going to occupy that seat, please. Anyway, I'll allow you to settle. Ladies and gentlemen, we've listened to the panelists and the discussants. The floor is open. I know today is Saturday, but the floor is open. This is a very serious conversation that we must have as a people. I can see the hands up. Can we start with our sister right there? Closer to you. Thank you. Your name and the institution or organization you represent, please. The rapporteur is there.
Yeah, I'm Reverend James Sherry. I'm representing Women's Forum on behalf of my president. Yeah, I'm just trying to add more to the suggestions, more suggestions on this, for us to
after looking at practices in various countries. There's also a recommendation that this country should transition permanently to the proportional representation system, because the consultations held by the Constitutional Review Committee pointed to the fact that there's an appetite for this kind of system. But then for government, it's not only about transitioning to the how both systems have worked in this country. Whatever we decide to do, government wants us to do something that will work for the people of this country. And say, whilst government accepted the recommendation in the Kawan Constitutional Review Committee's report that we transition to a PR system, government also wants a discussion about what kind of PR system will work for this country. That is the route that we decide to take. I like to say that there's a reason why over 94 democracies across the world practice some form of PR system. I like to make emphasis on some form. That means there are variations. Because in Sierra Leone we use the post-war model, and then because we've done the district model, but then there are concerns about how the system has worked. And so when we say, yes, several countries practice some form of PR system, it means we also have the opportunity to shape what really works for our country. We have the opportunity to shape what will reflect the views and aspirations of the people of this country, so that we close the trust deficit that exists between people and government, so that the people will feel that their voices matter, and the people will also really believe that they have helped to shape a system that will not only work for all of us, but a system that will outlive us. You know, so these are considerations that we should have when we hold these discussions. So be rest assured that whatever comes out of these consultations, government is very, very committed to implementing these reforms. And the consultations reflect a position that says we go with first past the post system. That is what we do. But if the consultations reveal that the people want a PR system, some form of PR system, that is what government will do. I also like to say that, you know, as part of our efforts in shaping a system that will work for this country, and then one thing that we should also have in mind when we make recommendations is how we get a system that significantly reduces the polarization we have in this country. I think we will all admit that the country has become deeply divided. But I think these discussions have the potential closing that divide. One, based on how we participate in these discussions, based on what we recommend for the people of this country. So let's have that in mind. Yesterday, we had a discussion here about recommendation 78, which is the preferred electoral system. But I also said to the political party representatives that there's a need to have recommendation 70 in mind if we have these discussions. How do we ensure there's broad political participation? So these two are really closely connected. So when we discuss this, yes, let us also look at recommendation 70. As a lawyer myself, I like to say it's like picnic, right? We have several lawyers in Sierra Leone right now. I know my colleague is here. We've had these discussions, And then we have the requirement of pupillage. And I said to colleagues when we're discussing review of the Legal Practitioners Act, is if you create a requirement for people, you need to provide the conditions or the enabling environment for people to fulfill that requirement. So if we say lawyers must undergo pupillage, then we need to make sure that there is space for them to fulfill that. That is how I also see this. If we want to ensure political participation, as recommended in recommendation 70, we need to provide a space for political parties to meet that requirement. So maybe the way we shape recommendation 78, which is the good part of the electoral system, will actually determine whether political parties would fulfill the requirement that we have created in recommendation 70. So let us have these in mind, and I'm not just discussing some of these subjects in isolation. But I want to thank you on behalf of government for taking time to do this. The president attaches the utmost importance to this, does not take it lightly at all. And so, thank you. And we look forward to receiving recommendations from these discussions. And you can count on the commitment of my office to ensure that these recommendations make their way into the law books of this country. Thank you to the facilitators, thank you to International Idea, thank you to the EU, thank you to expert panelists for taking time to do so. Of course, thanks to you for being here as well.
Yes.
Sorry, as a referee,
Your name and its
Mohammed Kenawi, current Chief Electoral Commissioner. As a referee, who will implement whatever the law gives us. And, well, I can give testimony for both systems, because I conducted my elections under the first past the post, and I conducted the general election using the PR system. So I've witnessed the good, the bad, and the ugly. At the moment, I'm enjoying the good of the PR system, because people will only reference my name in discussion with reference to 2023, but not for by-elections. And however, I just want to make statement on the threshold. For 2023 elections, we use the PR system, and the commission determined the threshold. And when the decision was made, we went to the archive of the commission. We also checked observation reports of the EU and so many other institutions. What we realized, and how did we determine that? There was a threshold of 12.5% for 202 elections. They were able to determine that the number of districts of 14 districts and divided by the number of seats of 112 and multiply that by 100, so it was 12.5%. So we use the same system, the number of districts, 16 districts, for 135 seats, and multiply that by 100, we got 11.8. So in other words, in 2002 we had a higher percentage threshold of 12.5%, while in 2023 we have 11.85 or 11.9. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tian Keller from the National Youth Council. I've seen that majority are going for the PR system. And I just want to give some few highlights of the past 2020 elections and how it's actually somehow disadvantaged young people within the both parties. So I'm just bringing highlights of what my elder sister there said. It's how we use the system. Actually, we saw in some places that the community people actually wanted their own representation. And when it gets to the party level, they have to choose who they want, which are disadvantaged somehow young people that are going into government system. Right? And it clearly states in the TLC system, recommendations made by the TLC. We want women, we want young people, we want people with disability in governance. I'm not saying the PR system is bad, but like what the Minister of Justice is saying, if we are to do reforms, it has to start with the political parties themselves. How are they going to build their parties, or how are they going to do the inclusive representation, bringing in young people, bringing in persons with disability, all of these things. So we want to see in the situation where if we are going in for the PR system, which I think the majority is going in for, then the reform has to start with the political parties themselves. And I think there's one recommendation I would do. My brothers and elder mentors are here. The TRC recommend that 10% of young people should be involved in governance. The women are there, but we're not seeing young people. So we want that to be part of the policy.
Thank you so much. Hold on, please. Please, let's make our contributions short and sweet, straight to the point, because we've got panelists here. We've got so many other people who would like to make their voices heard in this process. Let's have the one next to him, then you can move.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Abigail Stevens. I work for Center for Coordination of Youth Activities, CCY. I think I will take the words of the panel of the wise, Dr. Spencer. You said, you ended up by saying the electoral system cannot solve all our problems, but help mitigate them. I think on the discussions from our experts, all of the two systems they have in our country. And one thing we need to know is for us to look at our context, our society as a country. Maybe I will not settle for any of the two at this particular time, but I want to encourage everybody to think out of the box, to see how best we can use the two systems, take out the good parts from the two systems, and see how we can make one, probably a mixed system or what we call a hybrid, in order for us to be able to mitigate our electoral system, like what Doc said. And I also want to join my colleague because I'm working for the largest constituency. Please, we've had that 30% for us, the women, but also let the largest constituents. What we are fighting for is 10%. Please, whatever system we resolve at, let them also have what they should have. Thank you.
Okay, we seem to be having there's a growing advocacy mission here for interest groups. Interest groups. The women who had a bit of yours, now with the young persons. Reverend, finally.
Boyfriend.
Reverend,
No.
hold on one second.
No, so I also want to add that so when I say not to discuss maybe 17 in isolation, I'm just going to the point that she just raised, about interest groups and representation. If you look at the recommendations in the Tripartite report, there's actually one recommendation for youth groups to be represented. I think we said starting at 5%. And then there's also a recommendation that the Persons with Disabilities Act be amended to also reflect the need for representation, progressive representation starting at 2%. So there are these recommendations in the Tripartite report, which we should also consider, as we discuss this preferred electoral system. I just wanted to throw that on the table.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. Yes, Reverend. Please, let's make it sweet and sharp. Otherwise, by the power vested in me, your mic will be turned off. Give you all 2 minutes, maximum 2 minutes each, please. Others would like to make their contribution.
Do I have the floor now, sir?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I hope you understood my instructions. Mahmoud, you follow my instructions, please.
Even if you want me to sit now, I'll sit. But if you want me to talk, then I can talk.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. The more I relate to this process, the more I am falling in love with methodology. My name is Reverend James. I am the National Coordinator for National Election Watch. And like I said, the more I am relating to this process, the more I am falling in love with the methodology that is being employed. In this hall, we are having highly educated people. And as I am seeing, the discussion is in line with that category of people who are here. Because you will not be going to discuss with the people, individuals in this format. So it's going to be very I have had some experience also with our electoral systems. And the issues that have been raised that are concerns are related to violence, related to cost of elections, related to issues of succession, and people are using that to bring out preferred, what should be the preferred. In the issue of violence, especially at by-elections, my observation is we only started getting violence at by-elections after the 2028 general elections. 2018, thank you. And that was when, for the councils, some councils were underrepresented and they needed to upgrade, and some were overstated and they had to drop someone. And then the APC won the seat in Bond. And there was so much jubilation and it became tumultuous. Because even for that election, the Electoral Commission had to call the SNPP Secretary General to tell him, we have still not got your nominations. So that tells you people really didn't care. We observed a by-election at Berry Junction, where there was a sports meet at the field. And just in that very field, that was where the police station was. And the voter turnout was less than 10%. So we have created the tension around elections, irrespective of what sort of system we are using. Our biggest problem, as I have observed, is with institutions. Whether they are sincere in administering their mandates. Constituency 101 was a turning issue. There are several rounds for that election. I said 110. Thank you very much. I confused the two. I confused the two because we also had another one for Leone, which was in Kailam district. 110. But when the Electoral Commission decided that we will apply the rule irrespective of who will be favored, the election was concluded. There was also a by-election in Potoko district, where the laws were applied, and that election went with little or no events. In fact, there was just one member of parliament who decided to go to the police station where he was not expected to go. But that was peacefully handled. So the issue about violence is all about applying what the law is saying, irrespective of who is involved. In the presentation that was made, it was stated that they will not be using a census result that is less than 2 years old for boundary delimitation. And so that we should also note that.
But that was just
But
a recommendation.
can I?
That was just a recommendation. It's not a policy statement.
What you have been doing really, you wait till they finish and then you come in with the corrections. But you are almost.
Can you summarize that, please?
All right, thank you. I know that the laws state that it can be a census result or any data that the Electoral Commission, in their feelings, is representative of the status of the population of the country. And that was what the Electoral Commission did in 2023 by taking the 2021 and 2015 censuses to get at
Thank you.
All right, sir, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Points well taken. Okay, sir. Your name and the institution, sorry.
Good afternoon all. I am Ali Badara Samuel, teacher for the past 20 years, school representative to SLTU for the past 18 years. It qualifies me to be an executive member of SLTU. I read about the PR while I was an art student before I converted to commercial and science. The PR is outdated and out of fashion. I prefer the consensus-based system. The consensus-based system, it takes the member of parliament to the people. And the people, the masses, the constituents, are the taxpayers. The member of parliament is paid out of the taxpayers' money. I standing here and paying tax to government each second. Yes, I'm using a mobile phone. Yes, so I'm paying. Am I not paying? Yes. Now, as one of the panelists, that is Mr. Abdulabali, the civil society, you said that political tension is not in the country. The security personnel, the tension in the country. If you know what I know, you know that. Let me just stop there. They are here. You say again, the PR, proportional representation. I read about it. Proportional representation, there is less falling on members of parliament. My member of parliament, Olumam Abangua, in 116. As for me, I was a journalist while I was PLC, Press Federation. That's why I never read about journalism. So I know what they are doing. Yes. So I interrogated her. Right? I said, Mama Abangua, how are you spending your money? Yes, it's my right. I'm paying her. It's out of my pocket. Because I'm paying tax. Then she started giving me account. Then the executive member said, Mama, forget it about it. I said, okay, you have started. Since you have started, I'm okay with you. All right. Yes, she's not transparent. Because We attended the same institution together. So now, let me summarize. Right? We are here today. I'm a teacher for the past 20 years. I've never conducted exam. I don't distribute papers. I don't give out results. We are here because of the fact that we are economically rich. You cannot publish a result. You cannot announce a result. Don't publish a result. It's unfair and it's unprofessional. An individual is tantamount to be prosecuted.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Marcos Bangua. I'm representing Citizens Forum for Democratic Accountability, C4D. I want to start by saying or asking all of us here, between simplicity and complexity, which one is more preferable? It is not so much about ourselves. It's about the people out there who may have little or no knowledge about the electoral system. Juxtaposing the two with a hair split analysis, I hold the strongest conviction that first past the post or simple plurality system is better for the people of this country. The panelists or contributors out there have said so many things. Today, we are talking about Sierra Leone being one of the unhappy nations in the world. And instances have been given. But I hold the view that it is this year, 2025, under the PR system, that Sierra Leone has been signaled out as one of the unhappy nations. And also, we talk about representation. Yes, PR system makes for representation, as exponents of PR system want us to believe. But looking at the other side when it comes to representation, whether it's a disability issue, whether it's women's issue, it's all grounded on the political parties. The system, how they organize, shape, and mold the system. Let me say 2007 elections, we had people with disability in parliament. Today, I doubt whether we have under the PR system. We want a situation wherein we can have simple, straightforward elections where voters, the voting, like say ballot papers are counted on time. That is what makes for democracy. Where we don't have to use software. You talk about the PR system, we all know what happened quite recently after the 2023 elections. And when we talk about multi-party system is a system wherein we allow political parties to contest, not merely two political parties. But under the PR system, we have seen how smaller political parties or third forces have been eliminated. Let's take to parliament. Do we have third parties there at the moment? No. Prior to this time, we had them in parliament. So when you talk in terms of representation, we need to take that into consideration. For time, I want to say that the first past the post is simple. It can be easily understood, and it can create stability in governance without coalition, which has the proclivity to create chaos in parliament.
Yeah.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much. I am Ishmael Bashir Kebe. I am a senior lecturer from the Mitmagai Technical University. Now, I want to start by thanking Dr. Spencer there Unfortunately, Mfad is not here. At our university level, when I was acting on faculty for the social sciences, the electoral system vis-a-vis the problems and inherited in the system was identified by my administration. And I conducted a public lecture, and during that public lecture, Dr. Spencer there did a very good job together with Mfadi. Unfortunately, he's not here. Based on these discussions, and based also on my competency as a lecturer of political science, over time, I have come to the realization that looking at the contextual issues that we have already identified that characterized these systems, the first past the food system against the PR system, we've identified that both of them have their own drawbacks, their merits, and their impediments. But if you put all of them on the scale, the proportional representation has a lot of benefit inherent to them, especially when we have laid emphasis on contextualizing the issues, looking at violence, looking at the resources involved in managing protracted elections, but also looking at the present status quo, which is polarization of society. I have come to the realization that if we use the PR system, it will be minimized. But let me also end up by observing that just like Brother John said from the watch, from the new, we have to a little bit broaden our methodology in consultation. In our presentation, somebody spoke about elitism. This is somehow characterized by high degree of elitism. So I'm suggesting that if we go, let's shift the methodology a little bit. Instead of it being a consultation like this, let it be done in a time hall where we can listen to a wide variety of opinions from civil society members. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can you answer and just say this is one of several?
Yes, this is one of several. I think I mentioned it. We started these in Britain. We started off with the EMB and the security sector. We had the political parties yesterday. This is the expert committee. Monday we're in local, Wednesday we're in Makini. But let me also inform you that Reverend James, who is part of the leadership of NEW, they have a grant that's from International IDEA. And they are helping this whole process by engaging other stakeholders, right? Reverend, is that the case? Is that the case, sir? Is that the case? Is that the case? Reverend, is that the case?
Yes or no? How many moderators? Yes, and we appreciate that because we have an opportunity to follow up, and we have really started. We have brought together all civil society leadership in all the districts in the country. We have discussed this extensively. Leone was there, Gabriel was there. It could not be all. I said the leadership. When you go to the district, civil society, please. When you go to the district, it's different from Western area. In the district, they have elected chairpersons of civil society organizations in all the districts. And so it is those leaders of civil society in all the districts that we brought together. And then a selection of civil society in the Western area who do not have chairmen of civil society organizations. We had a good collection of them. And the presentations were made by Gavin, Leone, and other experts. So, you are correct.
Thank you very much. I wanted Reverend to confirm that they have a grant from the And just to add that that grant includes them participating in concessions. And as part of the current plan, NEW is going to present a position paper in the National Dialogue Conference. So civil society.
So thank you, Mahmoud. And let me just remind all of us that even in the religious community, we've had conversation with them. So just as I think we did for the constitutional review process, institutions and individuals be encouraged to present their position papers. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, so that's where we are. So there are efforts to broaden the scope of the consultations. This is about salute.